It seems like everybody is writing their memoirs or their version of the great American novel. I recently had an opportunity to speak with three authors who self published their books. Each had their own experience with promoting their book. They all admitted that self publishing and self promoting was one of the hardest things they've ever attempted. Find out what they had to say when I asked them, when you finish your next book, how are you planning to publish it? My guest today is James Redwood. He has a master's in special education and he teaches dyslexic students. And how many times have you said, or you know somebody who said, when I retire, I'm going to write a book because I got a great story to tell? And then some people actually do that. And that was the reason I invited James to join us on the show today, because he actually did it. He's a first-time author who self-published. And in finding out more information about publishing, self-publishing or the traditional publishing with a publishing house, I'd like to learn about your experience. You know, what was it like? You wrote your book. You think this is going to be the great American novel that everybody's going to want to buy. After all of the technical stuff is corrected, the formatting and all of that, and now the book is ready for the public to see.
Yes.
What did you do next?
I went ahead and went about publishing it. Like, you can self-publish in a lot of different ways. You can self-publish and just be on Amazon and just have a digital copy, and it can be very inexpensive to do. I felt like what I had in front of me, this manuscript I had, was actually deserving of, a full-on novel that people could pick up and physically read.
How do you get the eyeballs to look inside your book?
I honestly can tell you what works best for me are book reviews and word of mouth. So I've had a lot of people request it for book reviews and like for a blog or whatever that reviews books. And every time that they come out with a new one and I get another good review, because I've only gotten good ones so far, it drives the sales a little bit. I think the nature of the book that you write can really matter. And when I say that is, like, a historical fiction book like what I wrote is extremely timeless. If you read the same exact book 20 years from now, you're going to get the same.
That's true. Give me your elevator pitch.
Absolutely. So this is a book about risk and reward. And think of war in Europe. And this is the first real world war in Europe that occurs. And when that occurs, people have to flee this war. This is the story of two young people who take immense amounts of risk. And it's an epic adventure story where they travel on separate ships, two ships, to the New World, taking this huge risk in an effort to find the reward of being able to live a life not stuck in a war-torn Europe. There you go.
Are you planning to write a second book? When you write it, are you planning to self-publish, or will you try to find a traditional publisher?
That's going to depend on where I'm at with this book, with this current book, with Two Ships, at the time where I'm finished with the manuscript and I'm ready to go.
Thank you so much for sharing your life and your information. And when you have your second book ready, give me a call and we'll talk some more. My next guest is an author who has been self-publishing for 12 years. During that time, the publishing business has gone through a lot of changes. And before we go into that, I'd like to welcome him to my show. His name is Hank Quentz, and he's been self-publishing for 12 years. And my first question is it easier to self-publish now than it was 12 years ago?
For me, it is. For another author, no. Self-publishing, what it means, and what many authors, people start self-publishing, they don't realize the self part means that the author does all the work a publisher would do.
Exactly.
Sold the book to the publisher. Now that's the same. It's the same now as it was 12 years ago.
What's your advice to wannabe authors who are like just starting out? Should they self-publish, or should they hunt for a real literary agent that believes in them and will make them into superstars?
That's something that every author has to make their own decisions on, whether they want to go through the self-publishing process, or whether they want to first try for an agent, and some publishers don't require an agent, so they could go for an agent and go for, directly to a publisher. If they want to do that, I tried that first.
How did it work out for you?
My first two books were published by a small indie press. And the experience was so bad, I decided to go into self-publishing. Yeah. So, but there's another choice besides going for a publisher and just self-publishing. There's the Vanity Press and the new hybrid press, which is basically a disguise, Vanity Press is in disguise. If you want to pay $10,000, you can get your book published through these people.
Well,
You don't have to do anything except pay the bill. You can write a great book, but it's who cares? Nobody knows about it, until you start to publish it. Or someone has to start marketing
yeah.
it. And I think the secret to book marketing really is just a piece of luck. It's like everything else in life,
I
Everything
agree.
you accomplish involves at least a little bit of luck. And so does success in the author business. Sure.
What are you up to these days? What are you writing about?
Well, I'm writing quite a few articles. I just went through a metamorphosis. After all this time, I've decided that social media marketing sucks. It's not worth the time and effort. So after a lot of introspection and doing research, I've decided on a new marketing strategy called ecosystem marketing. I started a new website. I got all these nonfiction books on fiction writing, on publishing and book marketing. So I'm taking a lot of material from those books and putting it on a website that's free for people to help people get, publish and market their books.
What's the address?
Writer's Arc.
I want to say thank you so much. And before we go, tell me the name of your latest publication, Creating Stories. And I'm
Information guide.
going to ask you, give me your elevator pitch.
This book has everything I know about writing fiction in a graphic style that will be, let's say, attractive to teenagers. I wrote a book called Creating Stories. This is a different version of it that's aimed at the younger market, probably teenagers, because it's all graphics, rather than just straight text. There's a lot of pictures, there's a lot of graphics, there's a lot of colors, stuff that will be attractive to the younger audience.
So, and the name of the book is?
The Infographic Guide to Creating Stories.
And can they get it on Amazon and all
Yes.
the?
Amazon, it's in print and ebook.
Okay, folks, let me tell you, this man has a lot of knowledge and he's willing to share it with everybody. And that's a very nice thing. So you're a nice man. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for putting up with me, Stuart.
My guest today is Bonnie Rosenzweig, who is the creator and producer of the groundbreaking TV show, Cagney and Lacey. And the reason we're talking today is that Barney self-published his own memoirs called Cagney, Lacey, and Me. And then his wife, Sharon Gless, the actress, published her memoirs, but she did it traditionally through Simon & Schuster. And I was curious if it makes a difference one way or the other. And that's what our conversation today is going to be all about. So first I want to say, welcome to the show, Bonnie, and it's good to see you again.
Always good to see you, Stuart. Some time ago, I think on Live on South Beach, I wrote a blog about one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my life. And one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my life, according to that article, was the decision to self-publish my book, Cagney and Lacey. But I regretted it because of several factors. I regretted it because the book never got the kind of release I thought it should have had. It never was interviewed. I was never reviewed by the New York Times. I was never on a bookshelf at Barnes and Noble. I didn't have the traditional accoutrement of the published author. So that was my big regret, and it was my big mistake. Now, having said that, I've had the experience secondhand of watching my wife's book come out.
Exactly. That was going to be my next question.
And Simon and Schuster, it's a very reputable company, very terrific company, who did a great job with her on producing the book. Good editor, nice help, nice cover. Thing looks good, and terrific publicity campaign. However, the publicity campaign had nothing to do with Simon and Schuster. They did next to nothing. It was all done by Rogers and Cowan and PMK, which were all paid for by my wife as the author. So she was on The View, and she was on CBS This Morning, and she was on NBC Today Show. She was on People Magazine. A lot of great press, and the book was well received. Nice commentary, good reviews. The audio version has won 2 or 3 awards. They did really nothing in terms of, the New York Times never did review the book. The New York Times did an article about the book in the entertainment section, but the book section never took it seriously. I've never seen it in an airport bookstore. And there were several cases where friends of mine went to bookstores, said they couldn't find it. And, or thing was sitting in an attic or a basement, not on the shelves, not in the window. I was going to give you one anecdotal story about what happened to me, my self-publishing. I did a good job in trying to get this thing promoted, not just my book, but the release of the DVDs. We went to New York, Sharon Glass, Tyne Daly, and myself. We were on The View, 7-minute segment on The View. Rosie O'Donnell held my book up and said, "Great book by Barney Rosenzweig. Everybody ought to go out there and buy it. And it's underneath your seat. Everybody's got a free copy." And then we went from there to the CBS Morning Show and the Fox Morning Show. And that night, I was on the air for an hour on radio in Manhattan, talking about my book and talking about my life. Because the next day, one opening at a bookstore, Barnes & Noble on 45th Street, 12 o'clock. We were telling everybody, Barney Rosenzweig and Sharon Glass and Tyne Daly are going to be there, sell their DVDs, autograph the book, all of that. We do all this great publicity. Couldn't be better. Show up by limo at the bookstore. There is a line around the block, 4 across, at least a couple of hundred people standing around in this thing, right? Great. Walk in, CBS radio is there. They interview me on the radio before I go upstairs to sign my book. And sure enough, the first person comes up holding 5 of my books. Each one of them wants each one of them autographed, and I autograph 5 books. Next person comes over, goes on. 19 books later, we're out of books. People are in line. There's no books. They brought the 19 or 20-year-old manager of Barnes & Noble, ordered 2 dozen books, figuring it's a first-time author. I don't want to embarrass him. That's almost, we'll have the books in. I never recovered from that moment. That was the last. I said, that's it. I didn't get hysterical. I didn't jump up and down. A piece of me just died, and that was it. That was my life as an author promoter.
So are you going to give up, or are you going to give it another shot?
No. I'm giving it another try. I get calls all the time from self-publishing houses, but it's all promotional stuff. You got to pay them. Pay them to self-publish.
Exactly.
I guess that's the difference. When you publish by yourself, you pay them to do it. Simon & Schuster do it. Sometimes they pay you, or at least it's a break even. But it's either way, it's a frustrating process.
What I learned about the publishing business from listening to my 3 guests today is that the authors that are in the right place at the right time with the right subject usually get picked. And everybody else has to market and fend for themselves. And those authors who are lucky enough to travel to venues where there are audiences that are interested in what they have to say and look forward to meeting them personally are the lucky ones, because they sell some books right on the spot. Everybody else, it's just the luck of the draw. Well, That's all for today. So until next time, think about it. Why not have a good time? And this was a conversation with Stuart Stewart.